Steelers fans, stop what you're doing right now. This is huge. The biggest decision in Pittsburgh football in years is happening as we speak, and what the front office does next could completely reshape this franchise for the next decade. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now because you do not want to miss a single update on this developing situation. We drop Steelers content every single day, and trust me, this story is far from over. Alright, let's dive into this because there is so much to unpack here. We are officially in uncharted territory. A new head coach is running the show. A new vision is being sold to the fan base. But the one question that keeps every single Steelers fan up at night still doesn't have an answer. Who is going to be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers next season? And look, I know what you're thinking. We've been through this before. We've heard the speculation. We've seen the names floated. But something feels different this time. There's a shift happening behind the scenes, and once you really start connecting the dots, it becomes painfully clear that the answer might not be the one most fans are hoping for. Let me take you back for a second to set the stage. This offseason has been a whirlwind. After what felt like an eternity of speculation, the Pittsburgh Steelers made the decision to bring in Mike McCarthy as their new head coach. Now, for those of you who might not be fully caught up, McCarthy is a Super Bowl winning coach. The man has a resume that speaks for itself. He took the Green Bay Packers to the Promised Land back in 2011, and since then he's been known as one of the premier offensive minds in the National Football League. But here's the thing. McCarthy wasn't just brought in to manage a roster. He wasn't just brought in to call plays and run a competent offense. The Steelers made this hire for one very specific reason. They believe Mike McCarthy can develop quarterbacks. Period. End of story. Think about it. Who did McCarthy work with in Green Bay? Aaron Rodgers. A guy who went from being a question mark sitting behind Brett Favre to becoming one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. And then in Dallas, McCarthy helped Dak Prescott take his game to another level. Say what you want about the Cowboys and their playoff struggles, but Dak's development under McCarthy was undeniable. This is the guy the Steelers are betting their future on, and that tells you everything you need to know about where this franchise's head is at right now. So here's where the conversation gets really interesting. On paper, the easiest answer to the quarterback question is obvious. Bring back Aaron Rodgers. The connection between Rodgers and McCarthy is legendary. These two have history. They've been through battles together. The locker room respects Rodgers. The coaching staff knows how to maximize his abilities. And, from a purely football standpoint, if you're trying to win games in 2026, Aaron Rodgers gives you the best chance to do that. But hold on, not so fast. Because despite all of that, there are no guarantees. None. Zero. And if you've been paying attention to how Rodgers has operated in recent off-seasons, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Last year, Rodgers took his sweet time. He waited. He deliberated. He kept teams guessing until deep into the calendar. And while some people admire that approach, it also creates chaos for organizations trying to plan their rosters. You can't build a team around a maybe. You can't structure your salary cap around uncertainty. And according to multiple reports that have been circulating over the past few weeks, the Steelers' front office might not be willing to wait around this time. Think about that for a second. Pittsburgh could actually set a deadline for Rodgers to make his decision. We're talking potentially before free agency even opens in March. That's a massive power move by the organization. That's them saying, we're not going to be held hostage by indecision. Either you're in or we're moving on. And if Rodgers hesitates, if he takes too long to commit, everything changes. That's when the backup plans kick in. That's when the front office starts making phone calls. That's when the draft board becomes the most important document in the building. Now, some fans might be thinking, okay, but what about the guys already on the roster? What about Will Howard? What about Mason Rudolph? Can't they step up and take the starting job? Look, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but let's be real with ourselves. Those guys are not the answer. They're depth pieces. They're insurance policies. They're the break glass in case of emergency options. The Steelers are not going to hand the keys to the franchise to either of those quarterbacks and expect to compete for a Super Bowl. That's just not how this works. If Rodgers doesn't come back, The Steelers are going to be aggressive. They're going to look for a high-upside quarterback in the draft, or they're going to pursue a proven veteran who can come in and compete right away. Either way, the status quo is not acceptable, and this is where the conversation gets uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. There's been a lot of chatter lately about the 2026 NFL draft class, and one name keeps coming up in connection with the Steelers: Ty Simpson. Now, before you react, let me give you some context here. Ty Simpson is a young quarterback who showed flashes of brilliance earlier in his college career. He has tools that make scouts drool. We're talking about arm talent. We're talking about mobility. We're talking about that rare combination of athleticism and football IQ that you just can't teach. But here's the catch. Simpson is raw. He's unpolished. He started hot in the college season, turning heads and making highlight reel plays. But as the year went on, he cooled off. The consistency wasn't there. The decision-making wavered at times. And while his ceiling is undeniably high, his floor is concerning. Sound familiar? Yeah, I know what you're thinking. We've been here before. Steelers fans have scars from this exact situation. Let's rewind to 2022. The Pittsburgh Steelers selected Kenny Pickett in the first round of the NFL Draft. At the time, it was met with mixed reactions. Some fans were excited, others were nervous, and in hindsight, it was a reach. It was a gamble driven more by desperation than by certainty. And watching that whole thing play out was brutal. Pickett never became the franchise quarterback the Steelers hoped for. He struggled with consistency. He dealt with injuries. And ultimately, the experiment failed. Pittsburgh moved on, and the quarterback carousel continued spinning. So, when we talk about drafting Ty Simpson, you can understand why some fans are hesitant. The memories are too fresh. The wounds haven't fully healed. And the idea of taking another swing on a high-ceiling, low-floor quarterback prospect is terrifying. But here's the thing that changes the equation this time. Mike McCarthy. McCarthy wasn't brought in to babysit a roster. He wasn't brought in to run a conservative operation and hope for the best. He was brought in specifically because the Steelers believe he can develop the next franchise quarterback. Think about what that means. If McCarthy can truly work his magic, if he can do with Simpson what he did with Rodgers, then suddenly this risky gamble doesn't seem so crazy. Suddenly, you're not just drafting a raw prospect. You're investing in a long-term project with the perfect teacher in place. This is why the Ty Simpson conversation feels more real than most fans want to admit. Even if Aaron Rodgers comes back, the Steelers could still draft a quarterback. In that scenario, Simpson sits behind Rodgers for a year or two, learns from one of the greatest to ever do it, and then takes over when Rodgers retires. That's actually a pretty ideal situation. But if Rodgers doesn't come back, if he decides to hang up the cleats or sign somewhere else, then the urgency skyrockets. Suddenly, Simpson isn't just a project. He becomes a necessity, and the Steelers might be forced to make a decision they're not entirely comfortable with. Would drafting Ty Simpson in the first round be risky? Absolutely. There's no sugarcoating that. Would it feel uncomfortable? Without question. Steelers fans have been burned before, and the thought of going through that again is nauseating. But here's the other side of the argument. If the Steelers truly believe in McCarthy's ability to develop quarterbacks, then passing on a young arm might actually be the bigger mistake. Sometimes the riskiest move is playing it safe. Sometimes you have to take the swing even when you're scared. And that brings us to the real crossroads this franchise is facing. Right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are standing at a fork in the road, and the path they choose will define this new era. One path is the familiar one. It's the safe route. You bring back Aaron Rodgers. You rely on veteran quarterbacks. You stay competitive year after year without ever truly committing to a long-term solution. It's comfortable. It's predictable. But it also means you're always chasing short-term success instead of building something sustainable. The other path is painful. It's uncertain. It's filled with risk and doubt and sleepless nights. But it's also the only path that might finally lead to a real answer at quarterback. A homegrown solution. A franchise player who can lead Pittsburgh for the next decade. Whether fans like it or not, all the signs are pointing toward the Steelers being willing to take a swing. And that swing might come sooner and higher in the draft than anyone feels comfortable with. This is the defining decision of the new era. This is the moment that will determine whether Mike McCarthy's tenure in Pittsburgh is remembered as a success or a failure. This is the move that could shape the trajectory of this franchise for years to come. And honestly, I get why fans are nervous. I really do. We've seen the Steelers strike out on quarterback decisions before. We've watched promising prospects flame out. We've experienced the heartbreak of unfulfilled potential. But at some point, you have to trust the process. You have to believe in the people making the decisions. And if the Steelers front office believes that Mike McCarthy is the right person to develop the next great Pittsburgh quarterback, then maybe, just maybe, we should give them the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean we can't be skeptical. That doesn't mean we can't ask tough questions. But it does mean we should keep an open mind as this offseason unfolds. So, what happens next? Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. We're in a holding pattern right now, waiting to see what Aaron Rodgers decides, waiting to see if the Steelers actually set that March deadline, waiting to see which direction the front office ultimately goes. But one thing is certain. This decision will not be made lightly. There's too much at stake. The pressure is immense, and every single person in that building knows how important this moment is. Steelers Nation, I need to hear from you on this one. What do you think is going to happen? Do you believe Aaron Rodgers is coming back to Pittsburgh? Are you ready to trust the process if the Steelers draft Ty Simpson? Or are you already bracing yourself for another roller coaster ride? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have this conversation. I genuinely want to know what the fan base is feeling right now because this is a situation that affects all of us. And hey, if you made it this far into the video, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button. It really helps the channel more than you know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We cover the Steelers every single day, breaking down all the latest news, rumors, and analysis. You do not want to miss what's coming next. This is going to be one of the most important off-seasons in recent memory. And I promise you, we're going to be here covering every twist and turn along the way. Thanks for watching, Steelers Nation. I'll catch you in the next one.